The circle is now complete. After promising to revisit the pilot and give the lions a fair shake that's absent of lazy contrivance, well, almost, we're finally here. And it only took a year of waiting. That's really not bad by our standards, eh, Tom?
Speaking of which, where's Khal Drogo vs. the North?
But we're not here for horses today. We're here for lions. How could the Lannisters win the Game of Thrones? Before we continue, if you'd like to support us, whether that's by joining our Patreon, or even just subscribing, liking, and sharing this video, that would be greatly appreciated and would help us regain our recently stilted momentum. For those new and a quick refresh for regulars, books or show for this series? Answer: usually we try to use the book's plots wherever we can, and we'll use any details we can that don't cause a short circuit with the show's latter main beats, because we know you guys prefer the books, and this might be a shocker, but so do we. But once you get past the War of the Five Kings and Tyrion's trial, you really don't have enough concrete plot progression in the books to be able to make informed decisions on the steps factions should take. Unless... Nope, still nothing. Stannis is very much looking like he'll beat the Boltons in the books. But he might not. But he will, because he's the fucking Menace. Love you, Menace. Euron is making some serious moves, and actually seems to be living up to his reputation. Instead of, this. Will Jon come back? Will Cersei make it through her trial? Or will Robert Strong be killed by the Faith's champion, who might be a redeemed Sandor, who is presumed dead in the books? Will the Northern conspiracy come to light? Will the Dornish plot bear fruit? What is to become of Faegon? What are the true intentions of the others? And on and on and on. We'd love to use the books in totality, but as you can see with where we're at, there's just too much uncertainty in where things will go, which is hopefully a different direction to the show. Hey, that rhymed, Tom! It's all ifs and buts and candy and nuts. Hey, that... Okay, I'll stop. With these How X Could Win videos, you're already stepping into the territory of fanfiction. If we made up our own ending to the books and used that for the second half of the scenario, we'd then be making fanfiction from fanfiction, which cans, worms, and their opening. As crappy as the second half of the show is, at least it's actually there and gives us concrete beats to go off. That being said, we're going to at least try and go for books as much as humanly possible, even in the latter half this time, and deal with those pesky plot points like Euron, Faegon, and King in the North, Stannis. Load up our epic new Lannister-inspired music, Tom, and let's get started. Because it's been a while, let's just quickly re-clarify the starting point for all factions, and that is when Ned makes his move by alerting Stannis and trying to justly seize power temporarily, and ends up captured and imprisoned. The reason we start here for every faction is because it prevents cop-out winning solutions for some factions, like Ned saying, "You know what, Robert mate? Don't think I fancy being your aunt, pal," or Tywin actually being a caring, attentive father to his children from childhood. So, what are the Lion's objectives? There's no half measures here, unless you count Tyrion, of course. Total power of the Iron Throne and all meaningful opposition squashed to the point of non-threat is their win condition. As a bonus, it would be nice to give Tywin that 1,000-year dynasty that he wants, but come on, let's try to be realistic here. Unless Tyrion has some children and gets hella ruthless, the Lannisters' dominance and strong legacy dies with Tywin. So the win condition is the Lannisters on the throne with the Seven Kingdoms all in check after the Walkers have been dealt with. Now let's have a look at the Lannisters' main strengths and advantages as both a faction and in their roster. I think the most obvious advantage to note is that the Lannisters begin the game in the winning position. They are on the throne in the form of Joffrey, who even in the eyes of the law is seen as half Lannister, the puppet master behind the throne is Tywin, and Tyrion as such is his voice at court when the game begins. It's less a game of snakes and ladders trying to climb to the top, and more a game of keep away to the other factions. There's also some great players in their lineup. We've got an S-tier player in the form of Tywin, who is at least in the conversation for the best player of the Game of Thrones, and two high B/low A-tier players in Tyrion and Kevin. They've also got 3 heirs to utilize for securing alliances. one of whom is the king, and despite being a little piece of shit of an incest goblin, is perhaps the most powerful card in the deck when it comes to alliance making. As a faction, the Lannisters also come out swinging. They're the richest house in the Seven Kingdoms in terms of wealth. This is a ridiculous advantage. There are very few things money can't buy, and this wealth will be super important later when it comes to dealing with a pesky Dragon Queen. The Lannisters also have the second biggest army in the realm, totaling 50,000 strong. It can also be reasonably speculated it's one of the best equipped due to the general prosperity of the Westerlands. So they've got decent weight to throw around on the military front and can basically meet every army but the Tyrells on the numbers front. Along with that, they also have some of the greatest warriors on staff, like Jaime, Gregor, Sandor, and some solid tacticians in Tywin, Kevin, and Adam Marbrand. However, Jaime, after rotting in a dungeon, comes out short a hand. But for a short while at least, they basically had an all-stars team. I'll be honest though, while it's nice to have this army, and on paper it should be an absolute force to be reckoned with, in practice, I think it's fair to say the Lions will be leaning more on politics and scheming than their martial might. At least where the living are concerned anyway. Finally, I think it's fair to say the Lannisters have the advantage of near total moral bankruptcy. Or as the Lannisters would say, they are highly pragmatic. For Tywin, pragmatism and ruthlessness are the same thing, which means whilst he's in charge, we can have the Lannisters do whatever it takes to get what they want, and it isn't breaking character or causing a contrivant short circuit. Better wake up that overgrown waste of air you call a henchman, Tywin. I sense war crimes may be on the agenda. That's their strengths, but what about their weaknesses? Well, as a faction, the Lions' biggest weakness would have to be, well, there's no other way to say it. It's themselves. The key players have absolutely no synergy or desire to work with one another to better the house as a whole. The relationship dynamic between Cersei and Tyrion is highly unstable and leads to the pair constantly trying to undermine each other, quite often for no other reason than pettiness. It wastes resources and cunning that's much better applied elsewhere, and heavily weakens the Lions from within. And that's not even considering this beautiful father-son relationship that Tywin and Tyrion share. And that's not considering these two delightful, utterly mentally unstable self-destruct buttons. Boom! This ultimately leaves Tywin as the linchpin to the house's grip on power. He's the only one who can keep them all reined in, making him simultaneously the house's greatest asset, as well as their Resident Evil-style glowing weak spots. The Lions' method of attaining power and control is also rather fragile. They rule through force and fear, not loyalty and love like the Starks do, or respect and admiration like the Mannis. This means they can only maintain allies while they have the means to exert control. If their grip slips, it's not just their enemies they have to worry about showing their back to. Back up, you sneaky fucking roses. Anyway, let's get started with step 1, and that is handling the War of the Five Kings. Our suggestion? Do nothing different. The Lannisters realistically couldn't have improved their situation with this war in either medium, and the twists of fate actually worked in their favor. We suggested in the initial vid that sparing Ned to achieve short-term peace would be the way to go, but upon reflection, yeah, Ned had to die, and quickly. Letting him leave King's Landing would have been disastrous for the Lions. On his way to the wall, Ned would have shared Joffrey's secret on his stop-offs, seeing it as his duty to the realm. Then you've got to ask, would he truly have taken the Black? Would Robb or the North even allow it? Even if Ned had reached the wall with intentions of taking the Black, he'd still likely urge Robb to support Stannis, the one true king, on his way up. As a dutiful son, Robb likely would have listened. Remember, Robb was only crowned king in the North after Ned's death, and even then, it seems the catalyst for the crowning was his father's execution. The final little nudge the Northerners needed to say, "Great, you've executed two of our wardens in a demeaning, humiliating manner less than 20 years apart. We've had enough of you southern twats telling us what to do. Fuck yous." Ironically, this little piece of shit's rash decision to execute Ned, while seemingly foolish on the surface, actually saved the Lions. God, that's painful to admit. It eliminated the risk of a Robb-Stannis alliance, which as a team-up, even the others and Dany combined should fear. Ours is the fury! And winter is coming. For all those who challenge the might of the wolf and the Manish united. All hail the one true... Oh, right, this vid is about favoritizing the Lannisters. Sorry. Marrying Sansa and Joffrey was also another suggestion in our pilot episode that initially achieves a facade of peace, possibly deterring the North and Riverlands from crowning Robb as king. However, once Stannis reveals the truth of Cersei's children's parentage, things probably start snapping into place for the Wolves, and the North's honor likely compels them to seek vengeance for Ned's death, or, even if Ned was spared, place the rightful king on the throne, causing the North to once again likely team up with Stannis, and as previously stated, spell doom for all who would oppose the Stags and the Wolves. Ours is the winter's coming fury. Motto trademarked by House Stark-Rathian. Even Sansa's queenship offers no leverage in appeasing the North, because they remain indifferent. Indifferent, Tom? Let's at least try to say it like a Northerner. They couldn't give two fanny-ass shites for southern politics and the like. Even if the Starks swore fealty to Joffrey, those oaths can be broken without dishonor, as they were made under false pretenses to a false king. Like during Robert's Rebellion, the North has loopholes to exploit. Just saying. Meanwhile, marrying Sansa to Joffrey or Tommen weakens the Lannisters by alienating the Tyrells, who are a far more valuable ally in the bigger picture. And unlike the North, the Tyrells can be kept sweet with a tie to that ugly iron chair. Tyrion handles Dorne well enough, there was never a chance of fully winning them over anyway. The Lannisters were lucky they just stayed neutral. The Vale, similarly, was a lost cause. The only potential match was Marcella and Robin, but she was better used to appease the Dornish, who are a far more dangerous and, more importantly, closer threat. The Vale also had strong incentives to oppose the Lannisters, close blood ties to the Starks through Lysa and Cat, and suspicions the Lannisters had killed Jon Arryn. Some Vale lords even contemplated rebellion against Lysa for not supporting Robb. So again, the Lannisters should just count themselves lucky that the Vale stayed out of it. Regarding the Greyjoys and the Iron Islands, they aren't really worth anything anyway. Plus, they do the Lions a favor. And what makes it even more sweeter is they do it in a manner which removes any potential reward obligations on the Lannisters' end. Thanks, Balon, you bellend. Now, I've heard it said that the Lannisters should have pacified the islands, forced them back into the fold, and installed new lords once Balon had done his damage to the north and Robb was feeling the noose tightening around his neck, to help prevent Euron from gaining a foothold. But I don't think this would work. Don't get me wrong, the Lannisters, with Tyrell backing, absolutely have the means to do this. But the Iron Islands have a long-held loyalty to the Greyjoys, and if you depose them, then Euron, the real Euron, not whatever this is, turns up. All the Lannisters have done is turn him from a conqueror into a liberator, which in all likelihood will earn him even more hero points among his people. Euron and the Iron Islands is a problem the Lions will have to deal with, one way or another, but trying to deal with them at this point is honestly just a waste of resources. And the real cherry on top of this whole thing was Stannis murdering Renly, which fractured relations between the Stormlands and the Reach, and gave the Lannisters a get-out-of-jail-free card. The Lannisters sent their regards, my king. Ultimately, the Lions couldn't have asked for better results. Even trying to swing a few more battle victories for Tywin might have backfired, as it potentially may have given him false confidence in a conventional war, which, as we saw, not his strong suit. What's the saying, Tom? If it ain't broke, don't fix it? Yeah, this was basically an overly long-winded way of us saying that. Moving on. On to step 2. Appoint a strong Lord Paramount of the Stormlands. Littlefinger gets the Riverlands in name, but Tywin wisely grants real control to a more spineless and compliant entity in those rat-like Freys, and those skin-flaying wankers the Boltons play ball and bring the North back into the fold. As for the Stormlands post-Blackwater, their fate isn't as clear. Either the title was retained by Joffrey/Tommen, given to someone utterly forgettable, or George simply forgot about them. But this is quite a big deal. The Stormlands are quite a powerful and valuable kingdom. Most notably, they provide one half of the buffer to those pesky Dornish with their consistently questionable loyalty. Yet they seem almost like an afterthought to the Lannisters after Blackwater, despite being one of the more unstable kingdoms, with their capital keep still basically in open rebellion. Sending Mace doesn't even get addressed till A Feast for Crows. All in all, it's one of the few times where I think Tywin is a little too lax with the situation. And it's not just the fact this undermines the authority of the crown, and could be seen as displaying weakness. Since we're going to tackle more book elements with this entry in the series, you'll know this has even more horrendous consequences later on. Now, if I were Tywin, even if Joffrey/Tommen are technically the heirs, I would be appointing a new Lord Paramount/Regent to oversee the Stormlands in their stead immediately after the Battle of the Blackwater. Someone who can get the lords back in line and unify the region back into a single strong faction under a single strong leader. In my opinion, there's only one man for the job who is on the Lannisters' side. Because of course, the Manus is the correct choice if we consider everyone. The Manus is the correct answer in all things. And if you disagree, the fires will decide who is right. However, since the Manus is not applicable for this position under the Lannisters' management, the best choice you could make is this brilliant, bald bastard. In a vacuum, Randyll Tarly is the most perfect choice you could make if you need a strong military leader to whip the Stormlands back into shape. His appointment is very justifiable in story too. Since he contributes heavily to the Lions and Roses military victories, it would only make sense for crafty Tywin to reward his efforts, but make use of his talents at the same time. However, this is not a vacuum, and we would be remiss if we don't mention the risk factors that go along with this appointment. The first biggie is that House Tarly is a Tyrell vassal, not a Lannister one. Randyll's loyalty is likely with the Roses if push comes to shove, and if the Roses do try and pull a power play, Tywin has practically handed them the Stormlands. The other major concern is the Stormlords' reception of Tarly as their new leader, even if he is just proxying for King Joffrey or Tommen. In fairness, he spends time with some of the repentant Stormlords in the books, and might have won some of them over. But at the end of the day, he is still a man of the Reach, and notably the only guy who ever handed Robert Baratheon an L, as well as the guy who was at the head of the Stormlands invasion during Bobby's rebellion. Pride and general animosity may cause the Stormlords who remember these events to resist Tarly's command. They are noted to be stubborn fuckers at the end of the day. Come on, it's like their region's defining personality trait. However, even with these risks, Tywin needs to roll the dice, because we honestly can't think of any other lord who could do this job better. Tom's suggestion of Kevin Lannister was also a solid shout, who of course is more on Tywin's wavelength. But Kev has been named Master of Laws in King's Landing, and it would also be wise to have a strong, capable commander on standby to protect the Lannisters' home turf. Especially since even without word of Euron spending the XP he earned in the Valyrian expansion DLC to level up the Ironborn, they are still technically in open rebellion, and might possibly decide second time's the charm with Lannisport after being kicked out of the North. It doesn't exactly help that Tywin middle fingers their request for independence either. Hostilities are basically inevitable. Anyway, this whole Stormlands thing might seem like an inconsequential ramble for now, but trust us, a unified and ship-shaped Stormlands is nothing short of crucial when we get to later events. And Tywin's not the only one who has lots of gold for company. Ooh, on to step 3, and that is kill this piece of shit ASAP. Stab him. Burn him! I don't care how, just make him dead, Tom. In the grand scheme, Joffrey's got to go. A useless king can be controlled if they're not defiant, a defiant king can be strong and effective if they're not useless, but Joffrey is a useless, defiant king. Joffrey's impulsive cruelty does way more harm than good. Sure, his execution of Ned worked out for the Lannisters by accident. It wasn't a tactical decision, it was a sociopathic whim. And if we look at his other whims, it seems that one was something of a fluke. Replacing him with Tommen, a kind but more importantly malleable alternative, is a win for the Lions on all fronts. But here's the snag. The timing just doesn't favor this move. Tywin just doesn't get enough time to get to know Joffrey and his shittiness to make this call. And trust us, he's the only one ruthless, pragmatic enough to contemplate this move. From Tywin's perspective, from what he's seen, Joffrey seems like a spoiled, mollycoddled brat who just needs firm discipline. Discipline he likely feels he can instill. He isn't yet aware Joffrey is the borderline irredeemable monster we've come to know through extended exposure to the sadistic little twat. Plus, orchestrating Joffrey's death requires careful timing, immense amounts of secrecy, and controlling Cersei's inevitable meltdown. It's really not as easy to pull off as people think. Now, this move isn't vital to victory, since those pesky roses are going to get him anyway. But killing Joffrey in-house before the roses can lets Tywin shape the narrative. Maybe Joff dies heroically, or tragically, instead of embarrassingly poisoned at his own wedding, while surrounded by what is supposed to be the best protection in the realm. I'm sorry, this scene brings me so much joy. It keeps the Lannisters from looking weak, and denies their enemies the confidence boost gained from pulling off such a bold hit. And if whispers spread that Tywin was behind it, even better! It's a warning.
I killed my own grandson because he was fucking up. So what do you think I'll do to you if you put a foot out of line?
Best of all, a preemptive move might, stress the word might, keep Tyrion in the fold, sparing Tywin a fatal crossbow chat on the shitter later on. It's not foolproof, as Tywin and Cersei may find other reasons to condemn or provoke our favourite little Lannister, but taking out Joffrey early on can have massive payoffs if Tywin can pull it off. That, and I just want new ways to picture him dead, Tom. I will never forgive what he did to our Ned, and how it hindered the one true king. Love you, Menace. And Ned, you're okay too, I suppose. On to step 4, and it's the biggie. Keep Tywin alive. Wonder why this video took so long? Here's your answer. Me and Tom went over every potential way the Lions could win the game we could think of. Literal hours of back and forth conversation trying to find in-character ways for the Lions to navigate their obstacles post Tywin's on the shitter demise. But all led back to an emphatic realization. Without Tywin, it simply cannot be done. Tywin is the linchpin. Without Tywin, House Lannister crumbles. Kevin can keep things steady, Jaime shows surprising leadership skills post-hand loss, and Tyrion brings sharp strategy. But none of them can hold it together like Tywin. He's the only one with the full package of intelligence, pragmatism, ruthlessness, and cunning to tackle the mess coming their way. Tyrell plots, Tywin's intelligence. Dany and Dorne, his cunning. Euron and Faegon, his ruthlessness. Walkers or Stannis/Jon, his pragmatism. Without him, the Lions can only address these issues piecemeal, if at all. Combine that with keeping Cersei in check, a Herculean task in itself, and it's clear Tywin is irreplaceable. Theoretically, a Tywin-level team can be built from his children and Kevin, but getting them to work as a team? Nope. Tyrion and Cersei will never get along, and Kevin doesn't trust Cersei's incompetence. That dream team? It ain't happening. And here is the problem. This is the reason this video has taken so long for us to produce, and ultimately, the reason the Lannisters can never truly win. Even with Tywin's brilliance, his death is nigh on an inevitability, and there is little he can do to prevent it without suddenly discovering he has green sight or some Deus Ex Machina situation. Robb, Stannis, the Tyrells, Dany, Littlefinger, even the fucking Greyjoys all have options. They can all make different choices that don't destroy their characters' foundations, but can drastically alter their outcomes. The Lannisters, unless you're going to make them give up the throne, retreat back to the Westerlands and consolidate from there, which is straight up disintegrating that contrivance ruler we're bending, are locked on the path to ruin. Even if you could somehow invent a time machine and have Tywin prevent the circumstances that are entirely his own fault, he will still eventually be taken out by factors completely outside of his control and beyond his influence, regardless of his choices. Let's say Tywin decides to have Joffrey killed and decides not to implicate Tyrion in the ordeal. Or Joffrey dies how he does originally, and let's say the small piece of his heart that belonged to Joanna pulls at Tywin just enough to spare his son's life. Great, no crossbow bolt to the chest, right? Well, if you spare Tyrion, Oberyn strikes. With Tyrion spared, the Red Viper is poised to have a bosh at murdering the Old Lion next. Poison theories, which in my opinion are only theories because no one has outright stated it, aside, Oberyn has both the motive and the smarts to take out Tywin. We're already at an impasse here. So the obvious move is to spare Tyrion and take Oberyn out of the picture, right? Let's come up with some super forced reason that gives Tywin the ability to negotiate with the Dornish prince and placate him, or justification to imprison the Red Viper or banish him from the capital. Problem solved, right? Well, the itsy bitsy spider comes to take the lion out. Even if Tywin dodges both Oberyn and Tyrion, Varys, insert lazy Thanos clip here, Tom, and superimpose Varys' face. Think of Kevin's death in the dance epilogue. You can basically just swap in Tywin. I have no doubt Tywin will be harder to catch than Kev, but Varys has 15 years of patience and plotting on his side. He can wait, and he will find the right moment. Tywin, while king in his own game, is unaware he is merely a pawn in someone else's. Make him aware of this, and he has the skills and resources to quickly get to the other side of the board and queen himself. But if this guy has masterfully kept his true intentions secret for 15 years, why would he all of a sudden carelessly slip up now? With Tywin's death, the dominoes fall. Cersei unravels everything. Without Tywin reining her in, her narcissism and short-sighted plays ruin House Lannister. She empowers the Faith, destabilizes King's Landing, and creates fertile chaos Varys happily exploits. The Lannister image also falters. Tywin's death emboldens their opposition, and even with their competence, Kevin and Jaime just can't save it. Kevin does his best, and Jaime's leadership potential post-Choppy Chop is extremely underrated, by the way, but they can't mitigate Cersei's destructive tendencies enough, on top of countering the many forces closing in. No matter how much you want to finish the Lion's victory jigsaw, without Tywin, it's ultimately missing a vital piece. Unless the opposition catches a nasty bout of Season 8, Tywin's death is the game over moment for House Lannister. Fade in the reins, Tom. The Lions now join them. But all the fun, interesting things are past this point in the story, so fuck it, Tom. Let's sprinkle on that contrivance, buddy. Little more. Now just a teeny bit more. Oh, pour in the lot, my friend. Wow, Tom! I can't believe what I'm seeing, but it's happening. Look! Tywin magically survives those crossbow bolts and or the potential poisoning thanks to a hearty breakfast of Deus Ex Oats and MacGuffin muffins. Oberyn is distracted or placated. Somehow. But Varys... Wait, has he just made a Season 8 level blunder and tipped Tywin off to his plans, forcing him to stay hidden? Yes! Tywin's back in the game! But honestly, even with this absurd setup, the Lannisters' problems are far from over. So load up those steps, Tom. Let's get the Lions back into the fight. Step 5. Dealing with the roses and... What, Tom? Oh, right, Tywin's still around, isn't he? And he had the counter to those plots figured out. Never mind. Carry on, Tywin. See, you don't always have to pull a Reigns of Castamere to deal with your rivals. Sometimes a gentle pushback is all it takes. Anyway, the real Step 5. Dealing with Cersei and, by extension, the Faith. Remember what we said in the Tyrell vid? Smart, intelligent characters act smart and intelligently in George's work. And Tywin, like with the Roses plots, once again had recognized the issue and already planned to deal with this. You just need him alive to follow it through. Cersei, like her dickhead son, is nothing short of a cancer to the Lannisters and their ability to remain in the winning position. After marrying Cersei to whichever strong political ally would have taken her, Tywin's intentions were to send her back to Casterly Rock to rule as Lady of the Rock. Can't really fault this move in all honesty. It gets her corrupting influence away from Tommen and removes her from the location she has a high degree of influence to a location where Tywin has the majority of influence. Cersei has been gone from the Rock for quite a few years now. She'll be almost a stranger to them. Not saying she can't still cause damage from the Rock, but she'll cause 7 hells of a lot less than she would have done in King's Landing, and it's going to take her a while to build up any sort of momentum. And well, no Cersei to permit their arming, no Faith rising up to any position of genuine threat. Like Stannis, I somehow don't see Tywin putting up with the High Sparrow shit, do you? So, that's the Lion's backyard taken care of. Tommen is on the throne and he's a good boy and does what he's told. The Stormlands are back under control thanks to Tarly, the Riverlands back under heel thanks to Jaime, and the North is secured by the Boltons. At least for now. And the Roses are currently out of options for plots in the short term, and the Iron Islands... insert mandatory copy-paste jab at how inconsequential they are. For now at least. Let's move on to the outside threats, starting with Daenerys Stormborn, first of her name, the mother of dragons, breaker of chains, titles, and step 6, which is occupy Dany and just bide your time. The Lannisters cannot hope to defeat Daenerys in open battle. Tywin, while a decent strategist, relies on conventional warfare and overwhelming force. That works against most enemies, but not against fire-breathing death lizards, which are essentially medieval nukes. Unlike Stannis, Tywin also lacks a wildcard magic user with tricks up there. No, Tom, I'm not saying that. How do you keep slipping these in? So how does the Lion stand a chance against the Dragon? By ditching brute force and leaning fully into his trademark cunning. The obvious suggestion is to hire a faceless man to eliminate Dany. It's probably most people's first thought, like it was ours. It's clean, efficient, and tempting, but when actually looked into, wildly impractical. As Littlefinger points out, hiring a faceless man costs more than an entire army of sellswords, and that's just for a merchant. For Daenerys, a Targaryen princess with an empire, dragons, and a growing legend, the cost would be astronomical. Faceless men don't operate like mercenaries. They're a creepy death cult with priorities beyond gold. Their price is also always ruinous to the client. They're likely to demand Tywin's immense wealth, Casterly Rock, and maybe even Tommen's crown. That's basically a self-inflicted L. The Faceless Men are a fascinating what if, but definitely not the ace card Tywin needs. Instead, Tywin could turn to attrition, bleeding Dany dry through chaos and proxy wars. The Lannisters have the resources of the realm and the Tyrell's backing. They can definitely afford this. Rather than meeting Dany head-on, Tywin could fund rebellions in Slaver's Bay, arm her enemies, and bankroll sellsword armies to harass her holdings. Over time, this would erode her resources and spread her forces thin. Without an army to back them up, Dany's dragons become less of a threat. They're powerful, for sure, but as both the storming of the Dragon Pit and this totally not illogical Season 8 scene suggest, they are not invincible. Meanwhile, assassination remains on the table. even without the faceless men. The world is full of skilled killers, and Tywin has the wealth to hire the best of them. With Dany's forces under constant threat and her inner circle likely to shrink, not to mention the effect on her mental state, the odds of one assassin getting lucky rise dramatically. If Dany falls, her coalition crumbles, and the Lannisters are left standing. There are risks, of course. Dany, like Robert Baratheon, has a knack for turning enemies into allies. If Tywin isn't careful, he could accidentally feed her army.
So better pay them well on sport.
And if Tyrion was condemned and is with Dany, he could try to counteract his father's plans. However, Tyrion, while clever, doesn't have the resources to match Tywin's piggy bank to withstand a prolonged game of attrition. He could delay the inevitable, but probably not prevent it. Ultimately, Tywin doesn't need to kill Dany outright. By drowning her in chaos, he can outlast her campaign and leave her depleted. In this case, gold, not fire, is the key to victory. On to step 7, and that is dealing with Dorne. This one is nice and short, thank the 7, eh Tom? The best way for the Lannisters to deal with Dorne is not to tackle them and their anti-lion animosity directly, but instead, like with the Roses, take their avenues of undermining from underneath them. In this case, the Mother of Dragons and Faegon. If the Lannisters deal with Dany and Faegon, they have effectively taken away Dorne's ability to level up their petty attempts at weakening the crown into a full-blown vengeance campaign. Dorne alone cannot take on the Lions and the Roses. Deny them their allies, and they can try to scheme and plot in the realm of the political for sure, but ultimately, they don't have the martial strength to take on their bitter enemies, especially when they don't have the home field advantage. Tyrion has, however, dropped a bollock on this one because, thanks to him, Dorne has Myrcella as a potential hostage. Some nobility in Dorne in the books even consider crowning her on the off chance it will cause the Dornish to rise up and support her against her brother. But the plot is put down by Prince Doran, who in the books is actually not useless. This isn't a huge problem, though. Kevin was able to negotiate Myrcella's return to King's Landing, where she can be kept safe. I don't see why Tywin wouldn't be able to do the same. It's quite a hard thing for the Dornish to back out of without giving away their intentions, especially after the attempt on the princess's life. So yeah, Arianne in her haste actually screws Dorne out of their extremely valuable bargaining chip from within. Nice going there. But hey, this is how the Lions win, so we're not complaining. Moving on. And we're at step 8, and because we're having a go at incorporating book elements, we've got this late game pest to account for, and that's the pretender young Griff / Faegon.
Ooh, foreshadowing payoff.
Legitimate Targaryen or not, Faegon forfeited his claim to the Iron Throne the moment Bobby's hammer and Jaime's sword spilled the blood of the dragon. And the Lions will be damned if they're going to allow some blue-haired upstart to take what's theirs. While Faegon presents a genuine threat in canon, his rise owes more to Westeros' fractured state than his own merits. The instability of the Stormlands, Cersei's catastrophic leadership, and Varys' assassination of Kevin Lannister leave the realm ripe for conquest. But this is a different timeline. Tywin Lannister is alive, his assassination thwarted, and the kingdom's unity is intact. Heck, even if Varys shot Tywin dead now, he's cleared out most of the dead wood and solidified King's Landing by removing Cersei and keeping the faith restrained, enough that the crown should be able to operate rather comfortably, with Lannister and Tyrell objectives one and the same. Keep Tommen and Marjorie on the throne long enough for an heir. Not to mention, instead of landing in a chaotic, destabilized Stormlands, Faegon, owing to step 2, faces a region under firm, unified leadership. Waiting for him ashore isn't some half-baked lordling, but Randall fucking Tarly, paddle in hand. He's more than capable of delivering a firm spanking to Faegon's forces. Faegon has the Golden Company, 10,000 shiny mercenaries with a solid reputation. But reputation doesn't win wars, unlike badass theme music does. What? You think the Rohirrim won the Battle of Pelennor Fields because of their bravery? Bah! It was all Howard Shore. Prove me wrong, I fucking dare you. The company's leader, Harry Strickland, has no stomach for battle, and is, shall we say, let's be kind, adverse to military competence, let alone going toe-to-toe with someone like Tarly. Even Jon Connington, though capable, isn't quite enough to match Randall's ability and just plain old superior numbers. The Stormlands, even after years of war, could likely muster a force that at minimum matches, but likely exceeds Faegon's numbers. And these aren't cowards either. They're Stormmen, hardened warriors from the land of Robert Baratheon and Stannis the North, who are unlikely to welcome a dragon they helped depose 14 years ago. The outcome? A one-sided battle. Tarly's disciplined and well-organized army annihilates Faegon's shiny, overrated mercs. If wiping out the Pretender's army with such ease doesn't put a rare smile on Tarly's face, nothing will. Simply put, Faegon is doomed in this scenario, and I genuinely feel sorry for him. We do have to mention though, or the comments will let us know, there is a chance Varys and Illyrio might reconsider their plans with the blue-haired Pretender. With Tywin alive and the realm stable, they may delay Faegon's invasion or pivot to another strategy, like trying to join forces with Dorne. Exploring these alternatives could be a video on its own in fairness. Unfortunately, we're running long on time and script length.
Sorry, Tom.
So let us know your thoughts on this in the comments or join the discussion on Discord. Sorry, I would love to explore this, but Tom will dispatch a faceless man to hunt me down if this vid drags out too long. It's already looking like it's gonna be double the length he deems acceptable for maintaining his sanity. Anyway, on to the next step, and that is... Step 9 in the Lion's path to victory, and we're back to threats in our own backyard, dealing with this prick. Euron Greyjoy is a paradox to this scenario. He's either a minor nuisance to be swatted aside, or an apocalyptic force of destruction. On the show, teleporting ships and impossible feats aside, he seemed to fall between meh, all the way to insultingly unfaithful to his source material for most fans. But in the books, Euron's potential ranges from an irritating yet effective pest and red herring to a godlike villain wielding some of the most powerful blood magic we've seen, with the power to control dragons and tear down the wall. If Euron is a fraud, which I personally suspect is the case, my reasons being George loves a good rug pull, his hyped-up sacrificial ritual may fail spectacularly, or worse, backfire and spell his own doom. Blood magic in A Song of Ice and Fire often seems to consistently carry disastrous and sometimes ironic consequences for those meddling with it. So, what makes Euron any different? In this scenario, Tywin wouldn't hesitate to crush him. A decisive campaign against the Iron Islands, led by commanders like Jaime or Kevin, or even Gregor Clegane, if he's still alive depending on how things with Tyrion go, would bring these shithole islands to heel. With the Ironborn already divided and weakened, the Lannister and Tyrell forces, which are still formidable despite recent losses in the War of the Five Kings, would absolutely steamroll Euron's forces on land. Even with their full strength, the Ironborn can muster about 20,000 men at an absolute push. With Victarion and part of the fleet away, Euron's numbers are dwindled further. If Tywin wanted to make a brutal example of the Ironborn, Gregor could raise the islands in a brutal massacring of, well, everyone. Alternatively, Jaime, now a seasoned leader, might focus on pacifying and bringing the islands back into the fold rather than annihilating them. You're no fun, Kingslayer. Either way, Euron's grand promises of conquering Westeros and commanding dragons would shatter. Losing the Iron Islands, his home base, and the very core of his power would destroy his credibility, likely leading to desertion or possibly even mutiny among his followers. Euron's reign would collapse, forcing him to flee or face execution. On the other hand, if Euron is as powerful as his hype suggests, things become murkier, and honestly, there's just not enough to work with for this video. Will he summon krakens, bind dragons, unleash plagues, or wield magic potent enough to rival armies? The truth is, George hasn't given us enough information to make even an educated guess. Damper's cryptic visions are intriguing, but should absolutely be taken with a grain of salt. And without clear evidence on what Euron's blood magic can achieve, us speculating risks drastically overselling or underselling his abilities. While a showdown between Tywin and a magical dark god Euron sounds fucking epic, we simply lack the material to do it any kind of justice. So for this scenario, we've just got to assume he's a fraud. For now, Euron's true threat remains one of the series' biggest unanswered questions. And with Euron, well, Fraudron anyway, wrapped up and taken care of, we've reached the endgame, and the final obstacle standing between the Lannisters and total victory. The White Walkers, the North, Jon, and scariest of all, Stannis the Menace, ultimate doom of the Lions. I've lumped them all together because the Lannisters' only means of dealing with any of these threats are to leverage them against each other. I also need to lay out a disclaimer, and that is, even though we're going to try and incorporate potential book events, we're going to have to go with the show depiction of the others and the Long Night in regards to their effectiveness, their forces, and their intentions. There is even less material regarding the others and the Long Night than there is regarding Euron's magic. So sorry guys, we tried to keep it with the books as much as we could, but our hands are absolutely tied at this point. In the show scenario, where the Boltons have defeated Stannis, and Jon Snow defeats them to become king in the North, the path to a Lannister victory is pretty clear. Jon, with no backing from Daenerys, would likely be desperate for help against the others. Jon was willing to ask Cersei for help in the show's canon story, and that was with Dany's backing. Tywin, with the Westerlands and Reach behind him, holds all of the cards, having both a massive military force and grain resources to help repel the others and prevent the North from starving to death in the conflict. Tywin is a pragmatic guy. If Jon presents undeniable proof, as he did in the show, Tywin will not ignore the threat, and he likely won't pull a fast one like his dumbass daughter did. Jon could be convinced to strike a deal. Tywin might offer to legitimize Jon, making him Lord of Winterfell, or if he was spared, send Tyrion to rule the North, securing it for the Lannisters, all in exchange for Jon bending the knee to the Iron Throne. Either way, we're about 90% certain Jon will take this deal, and because he's a Stark, keep his word. He cared not for ruling, only saving his people. And since Jon is the one with the know-how in fighting the Walkers, and at least in the show is Azor Ahai D&D, the living are likely to fare well against the others. Jon was able to beat the others back with just the North and Dany's army. With the backing of the Westerlands and the massive army of the Reach, they should fare much better, even without the dragons. Especially since Tywin is unlikely to order his cavalry to charge into the darkness to try and break an enemy that even rudimentary common sense would tell you can't be broken. Just why D&D? Why? But yeah, for the show's events, that pushes the Lannisters to their victory conditions. How long it lasts is up for debate. Probably until Tywin dies of natural causes. Or perhaps Jaime has what it takes to carry on his father's legacy of a strong house. Who knows? But regardless, for now at least, the Lions have won. But don't think you can stop editing, Tom. We've still got the books to do. I swear that creepy guy stood at my window had blue eyes a second ago. In the books, the situation is quite different. While there is limited information on the others and Euron's magic, there is much more to work with regarding the Boltons, Stannis, and the North. In the books, it's looking very favourable that the Menace is going to hand those skin-flaying fucks their arses in a supreme show of strategic brilliance, which will see Stannis declared king by the North, who will then back his claim to the Iron Throne as reward for avenging the Starks. This changes the game entirely for the Lannisters if the Menace lives. Stannis isn't going to bend the knee to anyone, no matter what the Lions offer. The idea of the Lannisters trying to negotiate with him is, well, I'm not sugarcoating it, fucking ludicrous. He would probably rather die fighting a losing battle against the others than ask for aid on the condition he submit to someone he considers illegitimate. Seriously, the Lions have a better chance of negotiating with the others. If Stannis withstands the icy bastards with his forces, which he has the potential to do, especially if he's got a Mel-resurrected Jon by his side, and Jon is indeed the promised prince, he will become an even more troublesome foe for the Lannisters than the others would have been. History suggests the others are at least open to the idea of compromise. The North, jolted neck and its vastness, is an absolute nightmare to invade. Stannis can basically recover and consolidate his strength in peace. And if Melisandre is still by his side after dealing with the others, since she might not turn to dust in the books, he'll have the good old dark magic card to play. Fun! Stannis can then march south when he's good and ready. Roses are also no longer a wild card. Stannis knows whose side they're on this time, and thus the shock and awe of the Tyrells is gone, and Stannis will have accounted for their numbers in his plans. Victory through invasion of the North isn't impossible, especially if the Lions are quick about it. They've got the numbers, and the Reach do have the grain resources to realistically supply an invasion of the North, but Tywin versus Stannis in a conventional war, especially if Stannis has the backing of the North, who are intimately familiar with the land, yeah, probably won't end well for the old lion and his flowery compadres. The same goes if Stannis comes south. He won't do so until he's ready, and he's the better military mind. So yep, I think my money is on the Manis taking what is his by right, as he should. In the book scenario, the only way for the Lions to win if assassination attempts fail, which they probably will do if Mel is around, is to pray. I'm deadly fucking serious. Pray that Stannis, true to his nature, faces the others beyond the wall early on in an attempt to protect the realm before the others set foot in it. Then pray that he holds them back a little bit. Then pray that he perishes in the battle, allowing for a more compromising figure, perhaps a potentially resurrected Jon Snow, to take hold of the North. With Jon in charge, the Lannisters could negotiate military aid and supplies in exchange for bending the knee, much as they could have done with Jon in the show. It's relying on factors beyond their control, but it's the only chance the Lannisters have to win in the books. They can't team up with the Manis, and if the North falls, the South is likely to follow. But if this scenario does play out and the Lions' prayers are answered, like they seemed to be with the War of the Five Kings, the Lannisters would once again secure their victory conditions, maintaining dominance over the realm, again for now. But hey, a win's a win, even if it's short-lived. Finally, we turn to our tidbits. Sorry guys, this video has really stretched on and I think Tom may wish to have me killed. Hang on a second, that guy is back at the window. No, I don't want any Balgar Babulis or Salsar Sasulis or whatever it is you're trying to say and sell. Go away, please. So, like the Tyrell vid, we'll acknowledge the biggest ones, but let you guys fill in the gaps and tell us the butterfly effects and so on in the comments. Littlefinger, Varys, Arya, Bran, and Lady Stoneheart. How much trouble do Littlefinger and Varys cause for the Lannisters, even if Varys is thwarted? How does Lady Stoneheart disrupt their hold on the Riverlands? And what role does Arya and Bran play when the Lions stay in the game stronger? Do note that in the books, Tywin is not on Arya's assassination list as he is in the show. It's a pretty important difference to Arya's impact to consider. And that's our take. What did we get right, what did we miss, and what did we get wrong? I'm sure you'll have no problem telling us, as you always do with this series. Thanks for watching, guys.